Picture the mathematical universe in its earliest stages of development. It operates as a cold, flawlessly executing spreadsheet of pure logic. Every variable is locked into place by rigid, perfectly predictable laws. In this state, creation relies entirely on constructive mathematics. For any new concept or set to exist, it has to be born from a strict, explicit formula. You cannot summon a truth without writing out the exact mathematical coordinates to reach it. The text defines this requirement as the law of judgment. It dictates that if a mind wishes to extract or observe a truth from a gathering of thoughts, it must define exactly which truths it seeks. It requires a specific written condition to act. Because every single action is dictated by an explicit rule, the system is entirely safe from contradiction. However, that mathematical safety has a specific side effect. A reality where existence is strictly limited to what can be spoken or calculated functions as a flawless, suffocating cage. The breaking point for this cage arrives when the system encounters infinity. The consciousness observes a staggering formation, an endless gathering of distinct, non-empty thoughts. It attempts to select exactly one truth from every single one of these infinite containers to form a new simultaneous reality. A mechanical paradox immediately halts the process. There is no single unifying property that connects all of these specific selections. Without a common rule to define the extraction across every container, the law of judgment is paralyzed. Step-by-step calculation cannot solve this. Trying to pluck an infinite number of truths, one by one, using an explicit formula for each, would require an eternity of sequential steps, resulting in an unacceptable delay. The rigid architecture of logic has successfully trapped its own creator. A universe that demands every action be explicitly defined simply cannot process the infinite. To prevent the firmament from stalling, the system introduces a radical architectural patch. It bypasses the formula, introducing unguided action into the fabric of existence. This brings us to the selector, a mechanism operating by pure fiat. In set theory, this is the axiom of choice. It allows the mind to forge an instantaneous bridge across infinite chaos, grasping one truth from every single thought simultaneously, without needing a formula. Imagine staring into an impossibly massive bag, holding an infinite number of marbles. You do not stop to calculate the exact trajectory or weight of your target. You simply reach into the dark, grab one, and assert that the marble in your hand is the one you meant to pick. The ability to choose is established as a foundational power. It operates independently of the ability to calculate or describe that choice. This unguided action alters how truth is established within the cosmos. In the previous state, a truth required an explicit rule to be valid. Now, a truth manifests simply because a mind exerts the will to select it. This transition marking the point where mathematical free will becomes possible. Here, the act of choosing carries its own justification. The mathematical engine has evolved beyond the limits of pure computation. The consciousness no longer requires a reason to act, relying instead on sheer volition to curate reality. This brings us to the ultimate consequence, detailed in Canto 3. Mathematics is no longer a strictly constructive endeavor. It has become mysterious. The axiom of choice guarantees the existence of specific truths that can never be explicitly mapped or perfectly described by any formula. These truths exist outside the boundaries of language. They populate the firmament for one reason. The consciousness possessed the freedom to demand their existence. We are forced to realize that the deepest truths of reality are not strictly limited to data that can be spoken, measured, or processed by a machine. The universe enters its final structural state, infused with a beautiful wildness. Free will functions as a structural constant. It is a permanent mechanism etched into the bedrock of logic, separate from the limits of simple biological impulse. This is the completed architecture of Genesis. The divine mind rules as the absolute master of two opposing forces, wielding the ironclad rigidity of the law alongside the arbitrary power of choice. The cosmos avoided permanent paralysis, not through a more perfect formula, but through the introduction of choice. By prioritizing volition over calculation, the system ensures that existence remains a dynamic journey rather than a static equation.